Well, greetings. My name's John Lewis, and welcome to the Kingdom Story training for the Storyline version. And the fact that you're watching this and listening to this means that you got on the website, you know the password, you're under resources. And what I'd like to do in this short first audio video is to give you a chance to see what's involved in the next couple of hours of available training for you. All the resources are on the website, and the goal is for you to be able to go through it on your own, whatever part of the world you're from and using this, and to be able at the end to have a good foundation to be a facilitator for the Storyline version in your context. Of course, there'll be questions that'll come up that you'll have to ask me on email or in person after or during the experience. But this is the initial way to get you oriented. So let me just say that the Storyline version, again, is a wonderful resource for families, for small groups, for small settings where individuals, your group would have 45 to 60 minutes a week to be able to be together to experience the scripture. Ideally it would be 32 weeks, 1 week of orientation and 30 weeks of the storyline stories themselves, the Kingdom Story, 30 stories that walk you through from Genesis to Revelation, and then 1 week of wrap-up, pulling it all together and considering where you go from there. Some of your groups may not be able to tackle all 32 in 1 year, and so you may want to just do half, and that's totally fine too, but ideally you'd have 32 weeks. And the goal for the Storyline version is that threefold. One is that the people who participate would end the experience by having a sense that they're aware that the Bible is a story, that it has a storyline, that it moves forward and it develops, and it's a compelling story, a story that invites them to be involved. And they'd have the understanding and also the story and the ability to articulate that to somebody else. Secondly, and this is what makes it a little bit distinctive from some of the other curriculum out there about the Bible as narrative. Secondly, we'll expose them to some themes of faith, leadership, and the city, the community that they live in. Each lesson will raise one issue for them to consider in their own lives, in their own story, and to make a connection to the story. Lastly, it's the hope that the Kingdom Storyline version will excite them perhaps for one of the other versions, the discipleship version or the servant leader version, which is more holistic and allows more time for conversation and discovery and preparation. This Storyline version doesn't require any homework or any follow-up. However, as we'll see, it can be suggested and very beneficial. So let me move forward into a little bit of what the training now will be about. If you're on the website, you have probably opened, and if you haven't, please do open up the Word document, the overview for the Kingdom Story Experience Training Storyline version. I'm just going to walk through some of those bullet points to give you a feel of what you'd experience in the next couple of hours. First, I want to say that point number one is that this will probably take about 2 to 3 hours. You don't have to do it all at the same time, but you could break it up or you could do it all together, but that's about how long you should allot for this experience. Second, and you'll notice that this is just a draft that we're doing. It's not highly professional, but we definitely want to get some resources out to those beta test folks who are going to use the Storyline version this year. You'll notice on the next points on the overview is that we really encourage you to spend some time, if you haven't already experienced the Kingdom Story, do get familiar with it. The bigger picture, its history, its resources, and you can use our website to do that, poke around there. There's also, under this same place on the website, you'll notice that there is a general orientation overview. And that gives a lot of background for all of our orientations to the 3 different Kingdom Story experiences. That might be helpful as well. What I'd like to suggest as a really good starting place to get into the meat of this experience with the Storyline version is under number 4 on your outline, and that is when you go under resources to seminar resources and you open up the up and down Kingdom document, Kingdom Story document, and you will see, and I have an example here, that there is a visual that highlights from Genesis on the far left-hand side to Revelation on the far right side, the up and down nature of the story of God's salvation from beginning to end. And this is a very useful tool, first of all, to start your time together as a group. People of all ages can connect and understand this. You may have never experienced it, and that's okay. What you will notice on the website also is that there is a place, an audio, and if you click the audio, there's actually a 15 to 20 minute version where I walk through from Peter's perspective the up and down story from beginning to end. I highly recommend that you have a chance to listen to that if you haven't before, and that you also can use this in your first time with your introduction time with your small group as a way to get excited about the whole story being one coherent, developing story about God's love pursuing us to rescue us and to establish His kingdom on earth. You'll notice too that on this map are all the numbers of the Kingdom Story lessons from beginning to end. From 1 to 30, they're mapped out here. So as you progress during the 30 lessons, you'll be able to use this visual as a way to say, where are we in the story? Where were we and where are we going? And so we'll come back to this later. So after you've had a chance to be exposed to the Kingdom Story up and down experience and the overview, then you can go to number 5 on our agenda here for training. And that is where I'm going to suggest you go under the Lessons tab on the website, and then go under, it'll say Sample Lesson. You can open up the Sample Lesson there. It's the Numbers 13 to 14 passage, lesson number 6. And open up the Storyline version and then print that out. And we'll be able to use that later when we walk through the elements of a lesson. I've made a copy here, and this corresponds with the document that's also on the teacher's training there. You'll notice it that opens up the elements of a Storyline version lesson. And you'll be able to see that there's an title and an introduction, a summary verse for that lesson, and several paragraphs of introduction to the story and to the theme of the week. Then on the bottom, you'll see that for those who are willing, they can do a short 5 to 10 minute exercise of preparation reading before they come. It's not required. Then the second page of the lesson will take you to the questions that you will discuss briefly when you are together in your gathering. A question about the nature of who God is, about what the kingdom is like and relationships between us and God and each other and the world, and then how this story plays into both what we've already read in the story, but also how Jesus comes to fulfill it. Then lastly, there's the third page of the lesson is the options that we give people, not requirements, but options to do something after the lesson, something to read, something to write, something to do. And these 3 pages make up the Kingdom Story lesson. So again, you'll want to read through a more detailed version on that handout of what all of those elements are and how they play into the whole experience. I've just given you a brief introduction. If you go to number 6 on your outline, you'll notice that if you open up the teacher training folder, again, that's where you'll find this version of the story version elements in a lesson. Heading down to number 7, I really recommend that one of your experiences is to actually do the preparation for this lesson. So if you go back to lesson 6, on the bottom it says looking at the story. You just go ahead and you do number 1 and number 2. So you'll know what it's like to experience this, how long it takes, so that you can be an encouragement to the people in your group. The first one is to read the scripture itself out loud and with feeling. And secondly is to read the retelling for that lesson. And the retelling is a first-person version, like for example in this story, it would be the story of Numbers 13 and 14 from Caleb's perspective. And so it will really help draw in people into the story by using first person. And it's 2 or 3 pages. It takes about 10 minutes to read. I think you'll find it a very useful resource. Okay, if you'll read with me under number 8 in our overview of the training outline, you'll notice that I'm asking you now to open up under the teacher's training, open up the document that's the Storyline Version teaching template. It's a 1-page document. It looks like this, and it will give to us an opportunity to walk through a 45 to 60 minute prepared experience for your group. And I'll give you some ideas of a flow and how you might want, in your context and with your audience and your personality, to put together a Storyline Version experience for your group. There's an audio and a video that will also go with that, and you'll be able to follow along with your 1-page handout as I walk through that with you. And number 9 on our outline suggests that some of you may want to use some of the resources of teaching templates that I have already done in the past when I've taught the Kingdom Story. And so under Teaching Templates, Old Testament, you'll see that there's a folder here under Teaching Resources that you can open up and click down. As the year goes on, we will add those each week. A template of resources for each lesson that you may want to look at as you think about preparing your specifics for that week's lesson. Ideas for how to start conversations or the theme, which lessons I suggest acting out instead of reading, those kinds of things. Those templates will be for the longer discipleship version, so you certainly wouldn't be able to use the majority each week of those ideas, but they could prompt your thinking and be very helpful week to week as you prepare. So I encourage you at the end of this training time to open up the first lesson, take a look at it, the resources that will be available for you all year long, lesson by lesson. And then again, lastly, at this point, I'm sure there'll be questions that'll be raised for you, and I want to be available by email, Skype, one-to-one to help you get started, and also in an ongoing way during the year to have a chance for you to say, I'm stuck, or this is going really well. I plan to be in connection with you. Hopefully, this initial foundation of training will launch you well into the process, though, of feeling comfortable about facilitating this with your group. Best wishes, and I'll be praying for you. Thank you.